Yeah, I mean, you have to factor it in. I mean, to your point, we were fortunate that Caitlin was able to get some gameplay and, very casually got back on the court and won the MVP at the qualifier. So happy for her. She's looked great. She's worked incredibly hard to be in a good spot from, the first day of training camp. But to your point, Sophie and Ty have not played in game action. So what we don't want to do is overload someone that is coming back.
That right there is Indiana Fever GM Amber Cox revealing something that should have every basketball fan concerned, a minutes restriction. For Caitlin Clark, the reigning Rookie of the Year who just dominated the Olympics qualifier and won MVP, the player who single-handedly changed the trajectory of this franchise and this league, and the justification? An ankle injury from a year ago. An injury she's already recovered from. An injury that didn't stop her from playing internationally just weeks ago.
Players, 40 minutes every night.
Okay, but listen, that goes directly to Caitlin Clark. Sophie Cunningham was never playing 40 minutes a night when the team was healthy. Sophie Cunningham was coming off the bench, shooting threes, being an enforcer, playing defense. Sophie Cunningham was playing like maybe 20 minutes a game for real. That is strictly about Caitlin Clark, who was playing 31 minutes a game and stuff like that. You trying to tell me you're trying to limit her to 25 minutes? Like, nah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that, bro. We are trying to go full throttle. Like, teams got better.
Listen to how carefully she's wording this. We don't want to overload someone coming back from injury. But here's what she's not saying. Sophie Cunningham never played 40 minutes a night when she was healthy. Sophie averaged 20 minutes per game as a bench player and three-point specialist. Ty Harris is a role player. This entire justification is about one person, and one person only. Caitlin Clark, who averaged 35 minutes per game last season and led the Fever to their first playoff appearance in years. That's who they're targeting with this minutes restriction.
We have a few back-to-backs, and even when they aren't back-to-backs, we're playing every other day just about. So being able to create a rotation that does have some depth. We have a lot of versatility in this group. I'm really excited about that, so that we're fresh when we get to the playoffs. And, Kelsey Mitchell's wheels don't fall off this time. That's the goal. I think that was really a point of emphasis in this free agency to make sure.
And now the real agenda comes out. Creating depth, building a rotation, making sure players are fresh for the playoffs. Here's the problem with that logic. While the Fever are talking about load management and minutes restrictions, Aja Wilson isn't on a minutes limit. Brianna Stewart isn't being held back. Sabrina Ionescu plays as much as her team needs her. The league's elite players play elite minutes because that's what championship contenders do. But Indiana wants to treat their generational talent like she's made of glass. Even though she just proved in Puerto Rico that she's healthy, dominant, and ready to go.
Coming in at number 10, for her to provide that depth to Caitlin, to Kelsey, and just have that rotation you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, look, the 10th pick is an interesting spot in the draft because you are a bit at the mercy of who is picking in front of you. We knew we were going to get somebody really great, but I said this on draft night. I really didn't expect Raven to be there. She was someone that, I kind of had in that 4, 5, 6 range. I think
malpractice. You are the only person that had her in the 4.
The draft pick justification is even more revealing. Amber Cox claims she had Raven Johnson ranked in the 4 to 6 range. Let's be very clear about this. Nobody else in the basketball world had Raven Johnson going 4th overall. Not a single major mock draft. Not one scouting service. The consensus had her going late lottery at best. So why is the Fever GM trying to convince everyone that landing her at 10 was some kind of steal? Because they need to justify why they drafted another guard when this team desperately needs size and shooting. They need to explain why adding more backcourt depth makes sense when you already have the best point guard in the league.
Competitive drive, obviously on the defensive end of the floor is really, really elite already. And then you see how her game has grown, shot almost 40% from 3-point this year. I mean, we just really loved everything about her. So when she was sitting there at 10, of course we were going to take her. So yes, it adds tremendous depth. But because we have Ty Harris, because, obviously we've got Caitlin back in healthy, it gives her a chance to really grow. For every rookie coming in this league, there is a learning curve. It is faster, it is more physical. So this gives Raven the opportunity to step into camp, to learn from our veterans, and,
competitive drive, leadership, elite defense. Those are all valuable qualities. But here's what Raven Johnson isn't. She's not a knockdown shooter who spaces the floor for Caitlin. She's not a versatile forward who can defend multiple positions. She's not the rim protector this team needed after watching Aaliyah Boston get overwhelmed in the playoffs. The Fever had the 10th pick in a draft with legitimate frontcourt talent available. They could have addressed their biggest weakness. Instead, they drafted their 4th point guard. And now the GM is on Indianapolis radio explaining why that makes sense because of minutes restrictions and load management. Connect those dots. They drafted guards because they're planning to limit Caitlin's minutes. They're building the roster around playing her less, not building a system that maximizes her generational talent.
Night out, you're playing against the very best in college basketball. And Raven's been doing it since her freshman year. And one of the things that Raven said to me when we were talking to her prior to the draft was, how Aaliyah really influenced her in terms of stepping up and being a leader. And even as early as her freshman year, Aaliyah telling her, we want to listen to you, lead us. And she said she carried that with her throughout her 4 years and really took that to heart. And I love that. And she's just so competitive. I mean, you see her in the semifinal versus UConn guarding Sarah Strong.
Now listen to this part carefully. We expect them to be available and practicing, but there's a difference between not playing games or playing games. That's GM speak for, we're going to ease them in slowly. For Sophie Cunningham, who's a role player, that's reasonable. For Ty Harris, who's still developing, that makes sense. But remember, this entire depth conversation started with Caitlin Clark's name. The implication is clear. They're grouping their franchise player with role players and rookies when it comes to playing time philosophy. Meanwhile, the Las Vegas Aces are running Aja Wilson into the ground chasing championships. The New York Liberty are maximizing every minute of Breanna Stewart's prime. That's what contenders do. They don't save their best players for some theoretical future. They use them to win now.
Yeah, and when it comes to Caitlin as well, I've seen some people think of it as a free agency signing in a way that she's coming back. She's like adding to this team. It's kind of just an addition in free agency. Is that something that it feels like for you guys in the front office, or how does that?
I'll tell you what, when we were going down to Puerto Rico and she was playing in that first game, I had a level of excitement to see her back on the floor. I mean, she's so special. She's so elite. The way that she prepares herself, the things that she's able to do.
And here it is, the real concern that's driving this entire strategy. We have a few back-to-backs. We're playing every other day. So being able to create a rotation that has depth, so we're fresh when we get to the playoffs and Kelsey Mitchell's wheels don't fall off this time. Kelsey Mitchell played heavy minutes last season and struggled in the playoffs. That's a legitimate concern. But the solution isn't to restrict Caitlin Clark, who's 23 years old, and in her athletic prime. The solution is to build a deeper roster around both of them, so neither one has to carry the entire offensive load. Instead, the Fever ran it back with essentially the same core, while their competitors got significantly better. Dallas added key pieces, Las Vegas retooled, New York stayed elite, and Indiana's big move was signing role players and drafting guards so they can play their superstar fewer minutes.
Caitlin Clark, the year prior, really started to pick up steam towards the end of the year and was the best in the league. So now that, Kelsey has had another tremendous year under her belt, Caitlin is back healthy, has been working so hard and looks great. We're just excited to see the two of them, lead our backcourt again.
Yeah.
Listen, man, ain't no reiterating Caitlin Clark. Y'all need to play the Caitlin Clark system. You talked about how she's generational, which we all know, then act like it. Act like she's generational. Play the style that best suits her, and let's rock and roll. Let's get it cracking. I don't want to hear about this minutes restriction. I don't want to see y'all suppressing her. We want to see Caitlin Clark boogie and do her thing. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think about what Amber Cox had to say.
Let's talk about what this really means for the 2025 season, because the implications go way beyond just minutes per game. First, the competitive reality. The Fever finished last season as the 6th seed and got swept in the first round. They were 20-20 in the regular season. Not bad for a team that was historically terrible the year before, but nowhere near championship level, and their response to that playoff loss is to limit their best players' impact. Think about the message that sends. While Caitlin Clark was in Puerto Rico, proving she's healthy and dominant, winning MVP at the Olympic qualifier, and showing she's ready for an even bigger role, her own front office was back in Indianapolis, planning how to play her less. Second, the development concern. Caitlin Clark is entering her second season. This is typically when elite players make their biggest leap. This is when they go from Rookie of the Year to MVP candidate. This is when they take over games and carry their teams to the next level. But the Fever are treating her sophomore campaign like it's a rehabilitation project. She doesn't need to be eased back into basketball. She needs to be unleashed. She needs a system built around her strengths, not a minutes restriction built around theoretical injury concerns from a year ago. Third, the roster construction problem. When you draft for depth instead of need, when you sign role players instead of impact starters, when you prioritize rotation flexibility over star power, you're building a team designed to be good but not great. You're constructing a roster that can survive the regular season, but won't scare anyone in the playoffs. The Fever needed a legitimate second scoring option behind Caitlin and Kelsey. They needed front court size to take pressure off Aliyah Boston. They needed three-point shooting to space the floor and let Caitlin operate. Instead, they got more guards and a plan to play their franchise player 28 minutes a night instead of 35. Fourth, the league-wide context. WNBA viewership exploded last season almost entirely because of Caitlin Clark. Attendance records were shattered at Fever games, merchandise sales went through the roof, national media coverage reached levels the league had never seen before, and all of that happened because Caitlin was on the floor doing extraordinary things. Now imagine trying to sell that same excitement when she's sitting on the bench for extended stretches because of a minutes restriction. Imagine fans buying tickets to see her play and watching her sit for the entire fourth quarter of a close game because the team is managing her workload. That's not just bad basketball strategy, that's bad business. Fifth, the player empowerment angle. Caitlin Clark is not the type of player who wants to be limited. Everything we've seen from her, from college through her rookie season to the Olympics qualifier, shows someone who wants to compete at the highest level without restrictions. She plays through contact, she embraces big moments, she wants the ball in crunch time. So what happens when the coaching staff starts pulling her early in games, when they sit her for entire quarters to keep her under 30 minutes, when they prioritize the rotation over winning? That creates tension, that creates frustration. And in today's WNBA, where player movement is more common than ever, that creates risk. Sixth, the competitive disadvantage. Every minute Caitlin Clark sits is a minute the Fever's offense becomes significantly worse. The numbers from last season were staggering. When she was on the court, Indiana's offensive rating was elite. When she sat, they struggled to score. That gap doesn't close just because you added some depth pieces and a rookie point guard. The best teams in the WNBA play their stars heavy minutes because stars win games. The gap between Caitlin Clark and her backup is enormous. Pretending otherwise, pretending that spreading minutes around makes the team better, ignores the fundamental reality of basketball. Your best players should play the most. Seventh, the precedent this sets. If the Fever succeed with this approach, if they somehow make a deep playoff run while limiting Caitlin's minutes, then fine, the strategy worked. But if they struggle, if they end up as a middling playoff team again, if they waste another year of her rookie contract, then what? Then you've established a pattern of mismanaging your franchise player. You've shown that the front office doesn't trust their own evaluation of talent. You've demonstrated that organizational caution matters more than competitive ambition. And that's how you lose the confidence of your star player. Eighth, the timing couldn't be worse. This is a pivotal season for the WNBA. The league is negotiating a new media rights deal. Expansion is on the horizon. Investment and attention are at all-time highs. And the single biggest driver of that growth is Caitlin Clark. The league needs her playing at her absolute peak, not being managed like a fragile asset. They need her chasing MVP awards and breaking records and doing things that make casual fans into diehards. A minutes restriction doesn't just hurt the Fever, it potentially dampens the momentum the entire league is trying to build. Ninth, let's address the injury excuse directly. Caitlin Clark's ankle injury happened in January 2024. It's now May 2025. She played through the entire Olympics qualifying tournament without incident. She looked explosive, healthy, and completely unrestricted. The medical justification for a minutes limit doesn't hold up to scrutiny. If the concern was legitimate, if there was real risk of re-injury, she wouldn't have been cleared for international competition. She wouldn't be practicing without limitations. The injury excuse feels like a convenient cover for a strategic decision that the front office knows will be unpopular. 10th, the opportunity cost. Caitlin Clark's rookie contract runs for 4 years. That's 4 seasons to build a championship contender around her while she's on a team-friendly deal. 4 years to maximize her prime before she becomes a free agent and can choose her destination. The Fever are about to waste year 2 of that window, implementing a minutes restriction that nobody asked for and nobody wants. So here's the bottom line. The Indiana Fever have a generational talent, a player who changed their franchise overnight, a player who's healthy, motivated, and ready to take the next step in her career. And their response is to play her less. Not because she's injured, not because she's struggling, but because they're worried about theoretical fatigue in a playoff run they haven't earned yet. Because they want to justify drafting another guard instead of addressing real roster needs. Because they're building a team designed for depth and flexibility instead of one built to maximize their superstar. That's not championship thinking. That's not how you build around a generational talent. And if the Fever aren't careful, it's how you waste the most important years of Caitlin Clark's career. So what do you think? Is this minutes restriction justified? Or is Indiana making a massive mistake? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see more WNBA coverage that actually tells you what's happening instead of what the front offices want you to believe, hit that subscribe button because this season is going to be fascinating to watch, for better or worse.